next two men are federal drug agents. The third man is Baton Rouge pilot and soldier of fortune, Barry Seal,
very careful
described by some law enforcement officials as one of the biggest arms and drug smugglers in the country. But it was Seal, not the drug agents, who asked us to videotape the meeting. This rendezvous between Barry Seal and agents of the Federal Drug Enforcement Agency took place outside a motel near Miami International Airport. The suspected smuggler wanted us to secretly videotape the meeting for what he called self-protection.
I received a sum of $10,000 today in cash and $100 bills. Payment received in payback of a loan that I made to a DEA operative who's working in this covert operation at this time.
Barry Seal is an enigma. On one hand, he's been working closely with federal drug agents in Miami and with the Central Intelligence Agency. He is a key witness in one of the most significant drug investigations ever conducted in South Florida. But at the same time, here in his hometown of Baton Rouge, the veteran pilot has been target of an intensive and what he describes unfair investigation.
I'm not a drug smuggler. I say prove it. Where's the proof?
A gun smuggler?
No. Where's the proof? You know, why am I not on the front page of the paper at Ryan Airport or any other airport with a load of dope, with a load of guns? If they're such good agents, and I'm so big, the biggest in the world, you know, the biggest in the world don't get away from law and from justice. You know that.
To prove Barry Seal is a major air smuggler, investigators in Baton Rouge have gone to extreme lengths.
Everyone that I was associated with in the entire operation made it well known that we're going to get Barry Seal whatever it costs.
Whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes. If it means putting dope in a fender well, we'll buy the dope. Hand you the dope, you stick it in the fender well.
Have you appeared before a grand jury?
Yes.
Did you tell the grand jury the truth?
No.
By admitting that he lied to a federal grand jury, Ken Webb is confessing to a felony crime, perjury. But he says he was pressured into committing perjury, intimidated by federal and state drug agents. And that's what this Eyewitness News close-up report is about the pressures that are involved in making the big case. When Uncle Sam wants you, pressure can be applied to your family, friends, business associates, even your defense attorney. In this story, the big case is the investigation of Barry Seal. Seal's guilt or innocence, however, is not an important issue in this story. What is important is that he has become a target of the U.S. government. And when that happens, the rules that govern our justice system are sometimes forgotten.
The cost of living an exciting life is high. You can't sit in Baton Rouge and go to work from 9 to 5 on Monday through Friday and go to the LSU football games on Saturday night and church on Sunday morning and have an exciting life. That may be exciting to 99% of the population, but to me it's not. And the exciting thing in life to me is to get into a life-threatening situation. Now that's excitement.
June 24th, 1984, Managua, Nicaragua. The man in the striped shirt is Pablo Escobar Gaviria.
Our mission was coordinated by the CIA and the Drug Enforcement Administration of the United States.
Pablo Escobar is described by law enforcement officials as one of the top cocaine barons in the world. The man facing the camera is Federico Vaughn, an aide to the Interior Minister in Nicaragua's Sandinista government.
Camera was mounted here on this bulkhead by the CIA. They had a remote control camera enclosed in an electronics box with a small eye on it so that it looked like an electronic gizmo inside the airplane.
The man wearing the fatigue hat is a Nicaraguan soldier.
We got the airplane completely ready to go, and about 5 minutes before departure time, the Army brought in the truckloads, the duffel bags full of cocaine, and they were loaded on board the aircraft by the Cuban and Sandinista soldiers.
These recently declassified photographs were secretly made by Barry Seal during an elaborate sting operation, a mission spanning from South Florida to the jungles of Colombia and into Managua, Nicaragua.
All right, fellas, let's go.
Barry Seal and two other Baton Rouge area men, Emil Camp and Peter Everson, were working with government agencies to prove that officials of Nicaragua's Sandinista government were involved in international cocaine trafficking.
I think that the Central Intelligence Agency and the State Department all along has known that the Sandinista government will go to any means to support and supply and finance their government, regardless of what it takes.
Barry Seal's name was not randomly pulled from telephone book yellow pages for the Nicaraguan mission.
I'm an aviation consultant.
Among the people Seal has consulted with are reputed cocaine baron Pablo Escobar and the family of Fabio Ochoa, another Colombian reputed to be one of the world's leading cocaine suppliers.
I buy and sell airplanes all over the world. I have for years. I make a very good living at it. I come into contact with all sorts of government people from outside the United States and all types of people. Sunday school teachers aren't the only ones that buy airplanes. Dope smugglers buy airplanes. Gun runners buy airplanes. The CIA buys airplanes. The Sandinistas buy airplanes. I sell airplanes to people that I don't even know where they're going or what they're going to do with them, just like a car salesman. Going to sell the car to rob the bank. He doesn't know that's where it's going.
It is Seal's involvement with Colombian cocaine traffickers that has made him a government target. Adding to his reputation as world-class drug smuggler was a conviction and long prison sentence handed down early this year in a major drug case in South Florida labeled Operation Screamer.
Screamer is a night bird of South America, and between the connection with night birds and their screaming at night and airplanes screaming all hours of day at night, the agents at the office come up with the name Screamer.
Facing 10 years in federal prison, Seal agreed to cooperate with investigators in setting up the Nicaraguan mission. But federal officials in Baton Rouge were not involved in the deal made with Seal. And a joint federal-state task force had already made him a major target.
I couldn't believe the kind of talk I was hearing from law enforcement men. In other words, they were saying that whatever it takes, we're going to get this guy. We don't care whether he's guilty or innocent. We want him.
How did they characterize it, Barry Seal?
Oh, he was the largest dope dealer in the Southwest, gun smuggler, and all this kind of stuff. Which, you know, personally, I feel it's absurd.
Ken Webb, who had known Barry Seal most of his life, was living in Springfield, Missouri when he says he was contacted by Louisiana State Police drug agents working with the federal task force. Webb claims he was coerced into working undercover. Did you resist going to work for them?
Oh, yes, I did.
How much pressure?
Oh, tremendous amount. You know, it was things like, you know, you have a nice lifestyle, you've got a good education, you've got a nice family, you've got this, that, and the other. It'd be a shame to see you lose all that.
Webb had run-ins with the law more than 20 years ago when he served time for abducting his estranged wife. He claims he was not in any trouble when drug agents began pressuring him.
I was told that, you know, that if I didn't go along with this, didn't cooperate, that some kind of charge would be found, or that I'd go down with the rest of the group, so to speak, and I'd be charged with conspiracy and numerous ways of getting to me.
I don't think it's paranoia. I think there's a real problem with government overreaching. And I think it's just a pattern of things that they have so much power. And there are so few guidelines to check prosecutorial and investigative discretion.
Baton Rouge lawyer James Boren represents Webb. Because of grand jury proceedings, he can't comment specifically on the case. In this society, is there a fear by people that they will be set up by agents, law enforcement agents?
You know, yes, I think there is. And I don't think it happens to people until they have come in contact with the justice system in some manner. And I'll give you an example. Lots of people who are charged and come in to see defense lawyers with minor offenses like a DWI or a possession of a small amount of marijuana, an ounce of marijuana, will tell me and tell other people in my profession, gee, I don't want to talk to you on the phone, I'm afraid my phone is bugged and I'm afraid people are following me, which I know and we all know is preposterous. You don't get your phone bugged because you got convicted of DWI or charged with possession of pot. But it is a general fear of government overreaching that I believe is pervasive.
My thinking was that because they were Louisiana State Police, and because I was born and raised in Louisiana, I know that sometimes anything goes. And my thinking was to protect myself and my family. And so I thought I'd best cooperate. I was, to say the least, frightened, to say the least.
In early 1983, Webb returned to Louisiana. His old friend Barry Seal provided him with a car, an apartment, and gave him a job. For the next 5 months, Webb began looking over Seal's shoulder, reporting to drug agents where Seal went and who he met with.
Operator, I need to call country code 57, city code 2, 1743. Hold on just a minute, please. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, I'm on long distance to Columbia. Hold on just a minute. You got a minute? Go ahead. Okay, operator, go ahead. Even Cormez. Sí, gracias. Gracias. Llamada más tarde, por favor. Gracias. Thank you.
One of Seal's idiosyncrasies is that he conducts virtually all of his business over pay telephones.
Hello? All right, go ahead. No, I called him in Miami this morning. He's not here. I just called Columbia. He'll be calling me back tonight. I'll let you know as soon as I can. Okay, thank you.
Ken Webb says he was instructed to gather as much information as possible about Seal's telephone calls and the pilot's other activities.
Everything to them was clandestine. Everything to them was subject. And I remember one of the secretaries brought one of Mr. Seal's associates and I a box of plain white box, okay, of donuts, which he handed to me and told me to go put it in the room. He'd join me shortly, which I did. And when I read that in the DEA report, it was nothing like that at all. The box was supposed to have been taped and double taped and all this, and then when I got into the room, instead of, I opened it and I saw drugs, and I don't even know what drugs look like, all right? I mean, you know, I saw drugs in there. And this was in a report. When I was called out of the active investigation, so to speak, I was shown a stack of reports that I supposedly had made. And I was just told to initial each page and not, read it. Well, I began to read, spot read, and I saw things there that I was supposed to have said and done or seen or whatever, which were not true. Absolutely lies. And so I objected, and I was told to shut up. I was told that I needed to remember the original deal that I was told about, and shut up, in other words.
Who told you this?
Several different agents.
There's specific narcotics officers who were putting the pressure on you?
Yes.
2 of them?
Mm-hmm.
Who were they?
Lieutenant Butch Mullen of Louisiana Narcotics, and Sergeant Jack Crittinger.
Also of the Louisiana State
Right.
Police. Louisiana State Police officials have refused to allow drug agents Butch Milan and Jack Crittenden to be interviewed for this report. Both agents have reputations as aggressive investigators. Milan played a key role in the investigation that led to the indictment of East Baton Rouge Parish District Attorney O.C. Brown. Milan had been involved in a long-standing feud with Brown dating back to 1981, when the drug agent wrote a strongly worded letter criticizing the DA's record on narcotics investigations. Brown accused Milan of trying to run the DA's office.
Now, you have one person who wrote a letter like that, and I'm not going to let him dictate how this system should work. Certainly not the district attorney's office, no way. And our record of conviction...
Jack Crittenden, the other drug agent who allegedly pressured informant Webb, has also been criticized in the past for his investigative tactics. In 1975, while working as a Baton Rouge City Police drug agent, Crittenden was accused of using false information to obtain a search warrant. A civil suit stemming from the complaint was reportedly settled out of court for $15,000. Currently, in a drug investigation unrelated to the Barry Seal case, Crittenden's tactics have come under fire.
Well, we represent a man who was charged in New Orleans U.S. District Court based on the strength or weakness of testimony of an individual that he had spent a good many of his young years together. As a matter of fact, my client was in the wedding of this individual who's now testifying against him, and as a result of knowing these people and discovering who these people were during our investigation, we have found that many of the statements that these people have given has changed over the course of time, depending on the frequency of the contact that they've had with Jack Crittenden of the Louisiana State Police.
Do you believe that Sergeant Crittenden is guilty of suborning of perjury?
I think there are allegations that we can substantiate that tend to show that Sergeant Crittenden participated in such an act.
Daniel Foreman is a Miami attorney. He's defending former Baton Rouge resident Bill McLeese in a marijuana case being tried in New Orleans.
The conduct here is so egregious and so goes outside the rules that we all must live by in order to have any honorable justice system at all, that it is conduct that is not only unbecoming to the government, but is conduct that must be stopped and exposed. Having been a former prosecutor with the United States Attorney's Office and Department of Justice, and having spent 6 years doing large narcotics investigations, I'm familiar with the type of procedures, techniques, rules that apply to the game, and these rules have been continuously violated from the grand jury sessions that occurred at the beginning right up into the time of trial, which we're now getting ready to commence in New Orleans.
Foreman says the case he is defending closely parallels the Barry Seal investigation in that a lifelong friend of his client was pressured into becoming an informant. U.S. Attorney Stanford Bardwell, whose office is conducting the Seal investigation, has refused to be interviewed for this report. Bardwell, however, concedes he was aware of questions raised about Webb's reliability and the truthfulness of his testimony before the witness was taken before a grand jury last January. Those questions were raised in a 115-page sworn statement given October 8, 1983 in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Bardwell says he discounted the statement because Barry Seal was present when it was given and may have intimidated Webb. Webb's attorney, Jim Boren, says to assure the U.S. attorney that Webb is not being threatened by Seal, the witness was brought to a private meeting with federal officials.
Well, I can't really tell you about what Ken tells me, and I can't comment on the merits, but I can tell you that if that was a concern that the federal government had, we did everything we could to disabuse them of that notion by making them and his son available to them without any possible outside forces available to bother him so that he could talk with them.
So this was not for a few minutes, this was for a period of an hour plus that they were able to talk with him.
I believe it was about that amount of time, yeah.
Are you under duress? What is your relationship now with Mr. Seal?
Well, I hope that we're still friends. I think that we are, like we always have been. I don't know how he looks at all this. I imagine that he's really shook up about it. I know he is. My relationship with him is such that I'm trying to maintain one.
Just
telling the truth is not easy.
Yeah, so long as we're straight on the record here, that I've had conversations with Mr. Seal, and Mr. Seal, in fact, brought you for this interview.
Absolutely.
In the course of this interview, Seal pressed Webb on several occasions to be more open and responsive to questions.
Is the government, in your opinion, involved in a cover-up?
No, I don't think you should ask me any opinions, okay?
Sure, it's your opinion.
Especially legal.
No.
Yeah.
Do you think they're trying to cover?
Seal has fully cooperated with us in the course of producing this report. He says he has a vested interest in the truth being told.
I think that the federal authorities are, I think, for the most part, good people. I think that there are bad eggs in every nest, but I think that there's no real mystique about me. Most of what I do is out in the open. I don't hide anything I'm doing. When I'm employed by government agencies and they ask me to keep discreet what they tell me, and I do. I try to move in the method and the ways that they ask me to move, and maybe to some of the local authorities it may seem that sometimes it's on border of criminalism, sometimes not. But I think that the overzealousness of the local federal authorities in the Middle District of Louisiana has caused them to cross their fine line that they walk also between right and wrong.
This is not the first time that the issue of overzealous investigation and prosecution has been raised in a case involving Barry Seal.
Agents of the United States and officials of the Mexican government arrested 9 men in Louisiana and Texas on charges of conspiring to smuggle almost 7 tons of explosives from the United States to Mexico for future transshipment to another foreign country, presumably Cuba.
In July 1972 in New Orleans, then U.S. Attorney Gerald Gallinghouse held a news conference to announce the government had uncovered a plot to overthrow Cuba. One of the people charged in the alleged plot was Barry Seal, at the time a pilot with a major airline. He had been the youngest 747 captain in the country. When the case went to trial, it was learned there was no plot to overthrow Cuba, as U.S. Attorney Gallinghouse had announced. In fact, the person setting up the arms deal was a U.S. government agent involved in a primitive sting operation. 2 years later, the Fifth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals threw out the charges in a decision sharply critical of overstepping by government prosecutors. Since then, Seal claims he's been singled out as a target by some federal and state investigators. A lawyer who formerly represented Seal in what was thought to be a relatively minor case agrees.
It was apparent to me even at that time that Barry was in fact a target. Barry managed to, or we managed to get out of the arms smuggling thing, and seemed like they took it out on him on the technical violation against Santa Claus.
The civil case stemmed from a 1974 incident in which a helicopter owned by Seal hit a power line while transporting Santa Claus to a shopping center.
You'd have thought I was representing Attila the Hun or John Dillinger or something. I believe Barry wound up paying a fine of $5,000. It was just absolutely ridiculous. The magistrate or the judge or whoever was there came down pretty hard on him and said, well, he could well afford a $5,000 fine because his wife had a large ring on or something to that effect.
Barry Seal's lifestyle has caused almost as much suspicion among investigators as his business dealings with cocaine barons. He lives in an expensive home in an affluent suburb of Baton Rouge, drives luxury automobiles, and travels around the country in a Learjet. Seal owns a fleet of airplanes, including this huge C-123 cargo plane, which was used in the Nicaraguan mission in which he was involved.
Whether you call it soldier fortune or what, it's a way of life for me. I enjoy it, and I'm going to keep doing it.
The risk is high in Seal's job, but so is the pay. In the Nicaraguan sting operation, $1.5 million was passed to Seal by one of the people accused in the case. Seal reportedly pocketed a sizable percentage as his fee. Were you all being paid for the mission?
Well, I'd rather not comment on that right now. The case is still pending before the courts.
There's a report that you collected better than $1 million for this particular mission.
Well, there's a lot of figures that you hear tossed around, but again, I'd rather not comment on the exact amount.
You won't deny that figure.
I'd just rather not comment.
Barry Seal had more at stake than just money. Miami drug agents with whom he worked promised to go to bat for him to get his 10-year prison sentence reduced if he cooperated. Federal drug officials in Miami won't discuss the deal made with Seal in the conspiracy case involving his installation of an extra fuel tank on a plane used for drug trafficking. Nor will they discuss the amount of money he has pocketed working with them. When federal officials learned of Seal's cooperation in this close-up report, a series of meetings were held in Louisiana and Miami to settle differences between law enforcement agencies. U.S. Attorney Stanley Marcus of Miami traveled to Louisiana to meet with federal officials from Baton Rouge and New Orleans on November 2nd. 10 days later, U.S. Attorney Stan Bardwell, one of his assistants, Brad Myers, and Al Winters, chief of the Federal Strike Force in New Orleans, flew to Miami to meet with Seal. None of the people involved in the meeting would talk about it.
It was a sealed hearing and meeting, and I'm not at liberty to discuss the contents of the meeting at this time.
The high-level meetings about Seal underscore the differing views held of him by drug agents.
It's not a feud. I think that the investigation being headed up now by Mr. Bardwell has floundered. I don't think that they, in fact, I'm positive they have no evidence of any wrongdoing because they've threatened grand jury witnesses, they've threatened attorneys, local attorneys. These are things that just aren't done. I'm not caught up in a feud between two government agencies. I think what we're caught up in here, as I mentioned before, is now Mr. Bardwell has found himself in the middle of a cover-up. His subordinates, local law enforcement officials on lower levels have done things, improprieties by forcing people to testify falsely to grand juries under oath, threatening people, harassing people. And I think that Mr. Bardwell probably was ignorant of the fact until the last minute.
Seal's major complaint about U.S. Attorney Bardwell, and the view is unchanged after the Miami meeting, is Bardwell's reluctance to let informant Ken Webb recant his grand jury testimony. In a letter October 12th, Webb's attorney, James Boren, requested that Webb be allowed to go before the grand jury and change his testimony. To date, there has been no action on the request. Previously, several motions were filed in closed court to allow Webb to review his testimony. But Federal District Court Judge Frank Palazzola rejected the request, ruling they violated grand jury secrecy.
Why is Mr. Bardwell hiding these perjured witnesses from the grand jury? Why doesn't he let them go in? I'll tell you why. Because it blows his whole case. He had nothing but lies and perjured testimony against me. He won't get a conviction because there is no wrongdoing.
Barry Seal is not the only person interested in seeing Ken Webb return to the grand jury.
I think that we have found a cancer in this community, and that cancer is governmental misconduct, governmental abuse of the principles of justice that we live for each day. And I think that the people in Baton Rouge and the people in this state need to stand up and say that we will not tolerate this type of activity.
Baton Rouge lawyer Roy Fugler was Seal's attorney when he learned that Ken Webb allegedly had been prompted into telling agents stories about his activities.
How many times did you met Ken Webb?
I'd met Mr. Webb one time. I've never had a conversation with him in my life. Even the one time that we met, we didn't speak other than, hello, this is Ken Webb and this is Roy Fugler. That was it. So this individual is sitting there telling me that there are government agents, local government agents in the city of Baton Rouge, that are trying to tell Mr. Webb certain facts and details about me to which he has absolutely no knowledge. He tells them that he has no knowledge, that he doesn't know anything to be true or not true because he doesn't know me. They tell him that that's all right because it's necessary for purposes of their investigation. And their investigation is that they are attempting to get at Mr. Barry Seal.
Fugler says the pressure of defending himself in a case in which he doesn't know what the allegations are has interrupted a promising career.
That the opportunities were being presented to me to work with people that had national reputations. I was given the opportunity to work and learn from them, and certainly the groundwork was laid for me to follow in their footsteps if I did a good job, which I was trying to do.
Fugler seemingly had made all the right moves in establishing his legal career. He was an investigator with the East Baton Rouge Parish DA's office, graduated from LSU Law School, and worked in a key position during the Louisiana Constitution Convention. In recent years, he was a defense lawyer in several major drug cases, including representing a major figure in the John DeLorean case in Los Angeles. The drug business is a cash business, and oftentimes legal fees are paid in cash. Fugler says the discovery of a large sum of cash in the trunk of an automobile he rented made him suspect to some investigators.
However, they were trying to find some way that they could, again, see if they couldn't tie those funds or that incident to Mr. Barry Seal, which was ludicrous, ridiculous. It had absolutely nothing to do with that case, nothing to do with any of the attorneys involved in that case. It was just pure coincidence that I happened to be an attorney on the case and knew Barry Seal.
Cash, about $200,000, was finally returned after other lawyers working with Fugler corroborated the money was for legal fees.
Being a lawyer is not a badge to commit unlawful acts, and I'm not saying that all lawyers are that they're no rotten apples, but it's been my experience that too often, simply because the lawyer represents an unpopular client, too many people automatically assume that the lawyer is involved in the same sort of nefarious activity as the client is alleged to be involved in.
Arthur Lemon of New Orleans has represented several unpopular clients who have been major targets for prosecution. Among them, reputed mafia boss Carlos Marcello, currently serving a federal prison sentence for his conviction in the Brylab Sting case in 1981.
It is a real threat, I believe, to the freedom of this country that the defense lawyer, in a criminal defense lawyer, is being subjected to so much high-handed harassment more and more by government prosecutors.
I tell people that are interested in practicing, particularly federal criminal law, that you have to live a lot cleaner life than you do doing other things. I mean, you just have to stay away from people. You don't socialize with your clients. Because you get more points than your client does. If your client's a drug dealer, he's worth so many points. If they can get the lawyer, though, that's worth more. It makes better headlines. It makes a better story. And there is a feeling, I believe, among a lot of federal prosecutors that if you do a lot of criminal defense work, you're at least involved in obstruction of justice, if not involved in the essential conspiracy itself, to whether it's to deal in drugs or whatever.
Baton Rouge lawyer John DiGiulio's clients include former Teamster official Edward Grady Parton, a target of federal and state investigators for years. When Parton was finally convicted, key witnesses included 2 of his former lawyers.
Lawyers don't have the best reputation in this day and age among the public, and the public will think that lawyer just has something to hide, and that's why he's fighting to keep his office from being searched or fighting to keep from going before a grand jury. When in fact the lawyers that I know that do that are very firm believers in the attorney-client privilege and the right of the client to the confidentiality. And it's the client's right they're fighting for, and the attorney doesn't have anything to hide.
So you're going to have to go on your own guts, your own common sense, your own religious upbringing, and what you want, and what you want this law to be, and what you want this country to be. When you're involved, my concept is that your duties to your client.
Frank Armani is a Syracuse, New York lawyer who has written a book dealing with the subject of attorney-client privilege. The book is about Armani's experiences after a client told him the location of bodies of murder victims, and Armani refused to give the information to investigators, claiming attorney-client confidentiality.
I think it's absolute with certain exceptions. If a life's at stake, if it's a question of a future crime or continuing crime, but I think it's for the existence of our constitutional system and for our freedom of individual that it's a very essential question.
In protecting attorney-client confidentiality, the government weapon most concerning defense lawyers is the grand jury subpoena.
Where the point drove home to me is that I've been practicing criminal law for about 9 years. I've represented people in all kinds of cases, and I feel like I know what I'm doing in criminal court. When I got a federal grand jury subpoena, it scared me to death.
James Boren is fighting a recent subpoena to testify before a federal grand jury in New Orleans.
My personal experience was that I'd represented lawyers who had subpoenas before grand juries and subpoenas to proceedings and lawyers who were even targets or subjects of an investigation. And I've always told them, fear not, the Sixth Amendment of the United States Constitution and the lawyer-client privilege will prevail, and you will not be required to answer this. Just hang in there and don't worry about it. But when a subpoena is delivered to you at your house and you're a criminal defense lawyer and you know that you're not in the best of favor with the prosecutors because you have vigorously represented your client, your desire to stand up for the principles that you believe in is directly proportionate to how scared you are of the federal government.
The problem is there's so much room and so much area for abuse in the use of the grand jury system. There are no rights basically given to the individual that goes into a grand jury room. The government chooses the place, the time, the questions that are asked, the format, the evidence that they intend to discuss. You have no rights to have an attorney, to have any counsel in the grand jury room. The prosecutor basically has total control of the entire grand jury system.
Why doesn't somebody invite me to the grand jury in Baton Rouge? Why hasn't Mr. Bardwell extended an invitation to me to come down there? I'll tell you why he doesn't want me. I'll tell you why he doesn't want the people in that grand jury to hear what I've just told you. Because it's all over then. Then he's liable to get indicted for obstruction of justice, for perjury. We have evidence that Mr. Bardwell himself has obstructed justice. Now, he may be immune to it because he's a U.S. attorney, but to introduce known perjured testimony to a grand jury is a felony.
Barry Seal and attorney Roy Fugler have chosen to challenge the government system of targeting, and in doing so, they are in effect telling federal prosecutors to put up or shut up. Fugler says there are risks involved in the challenge.
When a defense attorney is trying to prepare himself for the onslaught of what the government is doing, the government claims, or the first thing that they want to do is say obstruction of justice. In other words, the defense attorney wants to get in touch with the witness and say, were you interviewed by the government? Could you tell us what they wanted to know? Could you tell us what you said? What's your position? And that way a defense attorney can prepare his case. He has an idea of what kind of defense he may have, what direction the government's going in. But the government takes a different view. They see that as being a tampering with the ongoing investigation. In many instances, they claim that that's obstruction of justice, that you're trying to intimidate their witnesses, quote, their witnesses.
Ken Webb was the government's witness. He worked as an informant for 5 months and testified before a grand jury, approving investigative documents that were given to the panel. But federal officials are now privately saying he cannot be believed, that his statements about being coerced are total fabrications.
They're all recorded.
And therein, defense attorneys say, is the paradox of using witnesses of Webb's caliber.
By cooperating with the government, it means that you have to tell the truth. Of course, the truth, however, is as it is perceived by the government. And I think that every factor that one can imagine, the saving one's skin, the reward, all of these things which are factors which heighten the probability of perjury are all present in these kind of situations.
An irony of this report is that Barry Seal, the target here in Baton Rouge, will now be put to the test as a witness in Miami. Seal's involvement in the joint CIA-DEA sting operation resulted in the indictment of 11 people, including 2 men reputed to be among the leading cocaine traffickers in the world. According to court documents, the case began to develop when Seal set up meetings with major drug suspects, including members of the family of alleged Colombian cocaine baron Fabio Ochoa. Ochoa's son, Jorge, has been indicted in the case, but not taken into custody. Agents say a Colombian airstrip controlled by the Ochoa family was the first stop in the movement of cocaine destined for Louisiana. In fact, Seal and his crew narrowly escaped death when a plane overloaded with cocaine crashed and burned there. A second plane, provided by the Ochoa family and piloted by Seal, flew into Nicaragua and was damaged when accidentally fired on by Sandinista soldiers.
We took a round in the left engine climbing out over the mountains in the clouds, and we lost the left engine, and we had to go back and make an emergency landing at the Sandino Managua International Airport about 10 o'clock at night. And we're immediately surrounded by the armed forces there, and we were hustled off and thrown in prison for a couple of days until the newspapers calmed down. The way they reported it to the newspapers was a local flight had taken off and had lost its way, and that the gunfire was tracer bullets shot by the anti-aircraft guns to show the pilot where to land at.
Finally, last June 24th, Seal's C-123, rigged with cameras by the CIA, was flown to Nicaragua. As cameras snapped pictures, 1,400 pounds of cocaine was loaded onto the huge plane. The smuggling plot called for the drugs to be flown to a secret landing strip in Louisiana. 2 days later, the plane load of cocaine arrived back in the United States. Not in Louisiana, but here at Homestead Air Force Base, south of Miami, where arrangements had been made with military authorities for the plane to land. Although Louisiana was the destination of the airplane, the plan called for the cocaine to be divided, with half going to California and half being transported south to Miami. In Miami, it was to be delivered to this automobile dealership in which Colombian cocaine supplier Pablo Escobar allegedly had a financial interest. Instead, a few blocks away, arrests were staged as part of the sting and the cocaine seized. Escobar was one of those indicted in the case, meaning that Barry Seal has become a witness against 2 men reputed to be among the world's leading cocaine suppliers.
The story is there's a $350,000 contract on your life.
That's true. John, is a risk in all covert operation work. There's a risk in everything that you do in this line of work. That's why the pay is so good.
It is Miami drug agents who say there is a contract on Seal's life if drug suspects Escobar or Ochoa are taken into custody. Not only are agents faced with protecting the safety of their million-dollar witness, his credibility must also be maintained. And that is one reason for the high-level meetings in recent weeks between Justice Department officials in Louisiana and Florida. An indictment of Seal in Louisiana would diminish his value as a witness in Florida, since he already has the drug-related conviction in Operation Screamer. New Orleans attorney Arthur Lemon says this type of bartering system is dangerous.
I can't think of any situation which is more conducive to perjury than that.
Lemon was a defense attorney in the Louisiana corruption investigation labeled Brylab. The chief witness in that case was Joseph Hauser, an insurance executive trying to bargain his way out of a long prison sentence.
He was a first-rate scoundrel, and he was a bright fellow, and he was capable of deceiving people into believing things that were not the case. And he did all of these things to save his own neck. He bartered in human lives.
In Hauser's case, you take somebody who's trying to work his way out of his own problem, and he in effect gets more points for nailing bigger fishes. He's gonna, and he has no scruples. He's a convicted man. He's in prison. They say, we'll let you out of prison to go around and see who you can catch. And he earns brownie points for the how impressive his target is, how impressive his catch is. And there are really no rules that he is willing to live by. If you remember in the Brylab case, they caught Hauser even talking in an empty room at one time to make the tape better.
Despite the sometimes incredible testimony of Joe Hauser, the jury in the Brylab case brought back guilty verdicts against Carlos Marcello and former Louisiana Commissioner of Administration Charles Romer. Joe Hauser had delivered the big case.
I think sometimes federal criminal work is as much like athletics as it is anything else. And winning is what both sides tend to get caught up in. And there are prices that are paid for that.
There's also a competition almost amongst investigators and law enforcement people that once someone has been identified as a bad guy, then it's embarrassing to them if he continues to roam around on the street, even if he's not breaking the law anymore. And they want to get him, and they'll do just about anything that they have to do it.
You know, this one agent that I talked to, boy, he was something else. He had a personal vendetta. I mean, personal.
Who was that?
Butch Mullen. Not stemming from the fact that Barry has broken the law or anything like that, but more from the standpoint of, I hate this guy.
Don't make good TV stuff.
I won't put it in the entire vernacular, but I hate this man. I'm going to get him if it's the last thing I do.
Drug agents in Baton Rouge are convinced that Barry Seal is a bad guy. To them, Barry Seal is a challenge, the big case. Defense attorney and former federal prosecutor Daniel Foreman.
I think that there is an attitude among law enforcement, not only in Louisiana, but really all over the country, and Miami is no exception, where they are so hell-bent on convicting and, in quote, protecting society from drug dealers that they are willing to do virtually anything to get those people that they perceive are participants in these events.
Operation Screamer, the South Florida case in which Barry Seal was convicted, was based on hundreds of hours of secretly recorded conversations, many involving Seal. Although the tape recordings show that Seal has had numerous business dealings with people reputed to be major drug traffickers, the tapes don't support the suspicion of Baton Rouge agents that their target is one of the biggest air smugglers in the country.
You see yourself getting indicted?
If they indict me, it means that I go to court. It means that then I get to tell my side of the story. all of this and much, much more that you're now hearing from me will be put out in the public eye. The Justice Department is not going to tolerate that. There's no way they can indict me.
It is not the purpose of this report to suggest Barry Seal is innocent, or for that matter, guilty of anything other than those crimes for which he has already been convicted. Certainly Seal has chosen a lifestyle that lends itself to suspicion. His association with Colombian cocaine suppliers and his involvement in exotic plots hatched by the CIA and DEA have given him a certain mystique. He claims it is this mystique that has made him a target of overzealous investigators. We have repeatedly sought comment from U.S. Attorney Bardwell and other officials about the allegations of investigative and prosecutorial misconduct. They have refused to be interviewed and expressed considerable resentment that Seal was even given a forum to express his complaints. But Barry Seal, Attorney Roy Fugler, and others have made allegations that go beyond their own personal problems with prosecutors. The targeting of individuals, the pressuring of witnesses, and the abuse of the grand jury process raise questions about the integrity of our system of justice. And when such questions are raised, regardless who asks them, they deserve to be answered. I'm John Camp, Channel 2 Eyewitness News.